This is the Saturday Morning Serial Podcast. Welcome to another episode of Saturday Morning Serial. I'm Amanda Ann here with Mike, and today we are going to discuss Moon Knight, which is now streaming on Disney+. Today we have a super fan on of Moon Knight named Ryan. Ryan, welcome.
Hello.
Plug your social medias. Do you have anything you want to share?
I usually work with Hogan's Heroes. You can find him on Facebook using Hogan's Heroes in the search bar. He's based out of Moni, Illinois, and he can ship anywhere in the world. He shipped to Ireland before and Canada, so he's working on the multinational end of it. But that's really all I got.
Awesome. We'll have that link down below, so please make sure you check that out for all your comic book needs. So, Moon Knight, the new show on Disney+, and I'm just going to come out and say that, I thought it was entertaining, but I was lost. Every episode, I was like, what happened? And Mike had to explain it to me.
I think that was kind of the point, is that you were supposed to be in kind of Steven's shoes as he was dealing with what was happening, and that was kind of what kept my interest in the show. Is you didn't really, you could understand what was happening, but you didn't necessarily know why it was happening. So that kept me interested. Ryan, you obviously know a lot about this character, so did you have a harder time following the show, or were you able to just follow along like it was nothing?
In the beginning, back when Moon Knight was first introduced in comics, they didn't know if he was schizophrenic with all these different personalities in him, or if he was actually DID. And in the 80s run, I think they decided that it was DID, so knowing more about that, I was able to follow along. But the reason I like Moon Knight so much is that he focuses on the mental health aspect of it, and I'm sure other superheroes have mental disabilities that I'm not aware of, but Mark Spector and Moon Knight really stood out to me when I was growing up and reading them, so I know all about Jake Lockley, I know all about Stephen Grant and Mark Spector, and I feel like the way that they did it is that they explained later on in the season is that Stephen was in a fugue state, like not coming out because he wasn't needed as much, and then when the show starts, his personality started coming out because Mark Spector was biting out more than he could chew. So that's where I feel like they did that to help the viewers and the audience realize that this is a new character. We're jumping in the middle of his superhero span because there's already been Mark Spector beating up people. So they use Stephen Grant as a in for other people to understand what's going on with his mental capabilities.
Yeah, and that makes actually sense. I know when Mike would kind of recap for me each episode, it made sense in the end. But going in just like completely blind to this show, and I obviously have not read the comics and I'm not overall familiar with the character. It's not, I highly recommend picking up a comic before watching this show, just to get a feel of like the Mark, the Steven, and then ultimately Jake was the third overall. So
I don't know if you guys know about the new comic book run that's out by Jed McKay and Alexandra Cappuccino, but those guys are 11 issues into the 2021 Moon Knight series, and the artwork is fantastic, and the writing is fantastic. It doesn't necessarily jump into his mental capacities, because it's just Mark being Mr. Knight and Moon Knight, but it does touch on why he's taking therapy. There's a therapist in every comic issue, and it's just wonderful to pick up and read. You don't even know anything about the character to jump in on this run.
Awesome. Thanks for suggesting that.
So, tell us about how accurate this is with the comics. How much of this is new and how much of this is borrowed?
So, I'm not going to go out on blast and say that I've read every issue of Moon Knight. I've done substantial research. I've read a lot of the Moon Knight comics. But from my understanding, from what I can glean from it, Moon Knight never had a suit that just appeared kind of like a symbiote Venom. But I think that the entire show was a good adaptation of the source material. It had the three personalities inside of the one body. It had Mr. Knight, the suit. It had Moon Knight. It had Khonshu. Khonshu is a huge player in the comics, and he was a huge player in the show, so they did that very well. The other gods and goddesses, from what I know, don't really play a part that much in the comics, but I love what they did with it, with Osiris and all the other avatars locking up Khonshu and Amut, and I think that was really good of them. And I think that it was interesting, the take that they did with Arthur Harrow, because Arthur Harrow in the comics is nothing like the Arthur Harrow in the show. Same thing with Scarlet Scarab. I love what they did with that character, because the character originally showed up for like 5 issues and then was killed off at 82. So I love that they're doing that, and I wish that they would bring back more of Scarlet Scarab and more of Moon Knight, because right now, as far as I know, this is the only thing he's doing.
All right. How does like the personality split between Moon Knight and Mr. Knight work? And can we expect to see Jake Lockley get his own suit?
That'd be cool.
It would be cool, but from what I understand, again, I haven't read every single comic, but I have a little bit of backstory about him. Moon Knight uses both in his crime fighting sprees, so it's not necessarily Stephen Grant is only Mr. Knight and Mark Spector is only Moon Knight. He uses both suits as needed, like in the run that I was just talking to you about with Jed McKay. He uses Mr. Knight to run his midnight mission and help the people on the streets, and then when he needs to go rough and tough, he puts on the Moon Knight suit. So having the personalities just into that one suit was a good twist on it. I like that a lot, because then we know which personality is in which suit. But it wasn't necessarily just something that happened in the comics. He used them as needed. And Jake Lockley, there is a... there's different takes on the Moon Knight costumes, but there's no, like, Jake Lockley costume. There's no, like, huge difference in costumes. The Moon Knight from the West Coast Avengers had a golden ankh on him, and he had more gauntlets and whatnot, but he wasn't totally taken over new concept design. But that would be interesting, and I'm hoping that they continue on so that Jake Lockley has his own suit. Although something tells me it's just going to be like a white blazer.
Yeah, he was pretty snazzy. He looked like he was from Brooklyn or Queens. With the accent. Yeah, he looked like a mobster, really.
Yeah, I liked both suits. I really liked Mr. Knight, though, because it really captured, like, the Britishness of it, and I wanted him to, like, show up with a cup of, like, Earl Grey tea or something.
So...
that last scene where he's fighting with Arthur Harrow, I love that he stopped and straightened up his suit.
Yes, I did too.
So is Stephen Grant, is that in the comics, is that a personality based off of like a fictional character within that world, or is Stephen Grant just a different personality? Like, is Stephen Grant being based off of this Indiana Jones knockoff? Is that something that's in the comics?
From what I understand, no. It's just his, basically his Tony Stark. He's the rich guy. He's the one that goes to all the parties. He doesn't have a British accent. He's based out in L.A. But that's his upper crust personality. So when he needs to get information from high-end people, he jumps into he has Steven jump into the body, and then when he needs to go on street-level kind of stuff, he has Jake Lockley take over and traffic cameron to get more information from thugs and prostitutes and whatnot. So I don't think that there's any fictional character that is tied to Stephen Grant, but one of the, I can't remember if it was the artists or the writers, was named Stephen Grant as well on the actual Moon Knight run. So I'm not sure if they did that on purpose or not.
Okay. So you said Egyptian lore really wasn't covered too much in the comics. That was probably where we were very much confused.
Yeah.
So how much Egyptian lore did you know about before you watched this show?
I knew about some of the gods like Osiris and Anubis, and I knew about the Field of Reeds and judging your heart when you go to the afterlife. I didn't know that it was Amut who did it. I thought it was Anubis through and through who judged your heart and your soul and decided where you ended up. Khonshu, I know, is the guardian of the travelers at night. So I figured that he was going to have a good/bad take on what to do with the superheroes and how Moon Knight was going to act, but I didn't know anything about Amut going in. I knew a little bit about Khonshu, but that was more of a fictionalized version, and I didn't know anything about Temoret. So to see Scarlet Scarab get avatared up was great for me because I didn't know anything about her, and I loved that they were able to make Layla an avatar, but not necessarily for Khonshu.
I've really enjoyed seeing Layla suit up, and I enjoyed Layla's role in this show as sort of like a halvesies between Mark and Steven. I mean, she was very capable of throwing hands, but she was also kind of like the Egyptian expert as well.
She was very essential to the story. And yeah, I really enjoyed her costume. I got like Wonder Woman 1984 vibes from it, but I'm like, this is so much better than Wonder Woman 1984.
Yeah, Wonder Woman's suit looked a little large, and I love that they had, because she's based in Egypt, they had to have a suit that breathed, quote unquote suit.
Yeah.
So I love that.
And I'm really enjoying like with the female characters like Sylvie and Loki, and then Scarlet Witch at the end of WandaVision, and Doctor Strange too. And then it's like they don't overly make the costumes sexy. And as someone who doesn't like to like bare cleavage and stuff, I really like how these female superheroes are getting these like really badass looking costumes now. So that was another one I really enjoyed.
I love that they make it so easy for cosplayers to pick up on it as well. Like the Sylvie suit is pretty easy to replicate.
Oh yeah.
I haven't made a cosplayer suit, but I've seen people do it left and right, so I'm assuming that it's easy to do, and I know that the Scarlet Scarab suit is probably going to be very easy to replicate as well. So I like that they're doing that for their fans as well.
Yeah, I'm thinking of both, so really excited.
Khonshu is he kind of possesses Mark, Steven, and Jake in different degrees, and he has different control over them. So is that him being kind of like a devil on Mark and Steven's shoulders? Is that something that he does in the comics, trying to push them and manipulate them?
He'll show up in the older lines. He'll show up and he'll push them in one direction. And a couple of years ago, he manipulated Mark Spector to try and take on the Avengers and take over the planet Earth. So yes, he's very much that devil on his shoulder, and he's not good, but he's also not bad. He just is very self-interested. But like I said, he protects the people who wander around at night. He has a soft spot for people, just not all people. But I love that they, especially that limo in the post-credit scene, that's taken straight from the comic books. So I love that they're doing that, not necessarily with Moon Knight, but also the Thor Love and Thunder, that one panel with the giant beast in the background.
Yeah, I enjoyed Khonshu showing up in the end credit scene in a suit. I thought that was fun. Gave him some more like depth to the character just with the suit.
The first episode I saw with I think it was the first, maybe it was the second, and he goes, the first thing you hear out of Khonshu is, "Oh great, the idiot's in charge."
Yeah.
I love that he was more of the comedic relief, where you would expect it to be Oscar Isaac, but I feel like they were both competing to be the funny side comment kind of person.
I just really liked that first episode, like the donut truck scene.
Yeah.
Like, no, it was a cupcake. It was cupcakes. I think that's really funny. So obviously there were I think 2 planned crossovers with Moon Knight. One of them was the Eternals. So as a comic book fan, how is Moon Knight / Mr. Knight treated by the other Avengers? Is he someone who is teamed up with often in the Avengers, or does he go off into like a smaller secondary group, like I believe it was the Sons of something?
Midnight Suns.
Midnight Suns, yes. So how is Moon Knight in the bigger Marvel universe?
I know he joined the West Coast Avengers, and that's kind of the B team. And he was in the Avengers for a while in the early 2000s. But most people at least in the current line that I'm reading, do not appreciate Mark Spector. They think he's a loose cannon, obviously, because they try to take over the Earth and take on the Avengers with Khonshu. That's why he's getting therapy help in the new comic line. But he does team up often, and people are very open to him helping. And then he's just kind of shunted off to the side when he's done what he has. What I think is that I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that Kevin Feige goes toward the Midnight Suns with Ghost Rider and with Blade and with Morbius, although I don't know how that would work with Sony. But Moon Knight was also part of that. So I'm very interested to see if they do a Midnight Suns, if Moon Knight would be part of it, and what the lineup would be like.
So, where would you like to see him pop up in the MCU next? Would you like a season 2 immediately, or would you think he might show up in something like Echo or She-Hulk or the Marvels or Thor: Love and Thunder? Like, where do you expect to see him next?
Yeah, because didn't we say, oh, this is a great opportunity? Was it you or maybe someone on YouTube was saying like the gods can have potential to show up in Love and Thunder, like Gore the God Butcher and all that?
Yeah,
I can see that happening. I don't think it will, because I feel like they made Moon Knight to be a self-contained story that is disconnected from the wider MCU. And I don't know about you guys, but I really appreciated that, because seeing Hulk or Dr. Banner would very much throw me out of the Moon Knight Egyptian ties, especially if there was a Thor in there. Be like, okay, that's cool. We're going to deal with this god instead of this god. So I like that it was more self-contained. What I think they might end up doing, / what I really want to see, is him and Blade team up together, because they both operate at night. They're both very violent characters. I can see him and Blade going at it together. Maybe as villains, maybe as anti-heroes together, but I definitely think that would be a great team up in the future.
It would be kind of cool. Maybe he doesn't have to meet Thor, but it would be cool to see Moon Knight, in my opinion, deal with like the fallout of Thor and Love and Thunder, because we are getting Gore the God Butcher. So maybe it would be cool if a few Egyptian gods were kind of butchered off screen, and Moon Knight had to deal with that, possibly help their avatars or whatever.
Well, if you think about it, when Khonshu was in prison, he lost his suit too. So that also has ramifications. That if he gets killed, will Mark and Steven have that suit still, or will they have to go around being a mercenary again, trying to build up from the bottom? And I think that might be an interesting way to go, where they discard that. I don't want to keep saying it, but the symbiote suit, where it just appears on him, and he actually has to hand make his white cloak and the suit and tie. I think that'd be very interesting to do.
Do you want to see the Moon Knight plane at all? Is that something you're pining for?
I could take it or leave it. But the one thing that I really enjoyed in this show is that it focused on that mental DID. And the one thing that I thought it was lacking is him going and beating up more people. Because he is one of the ultra-violent of Marvel, and he often teams up with Punisher, he often teams up with these other characters that are out for blood. And I feel like the show kind of didn't really have much of that, but I understand why they did it. They were just introducing the character. But if there's more, I want to see Mark Spector go ham on some people.
Well, we did see the aftermath of him beating up a lot of people, but we mostly followed the show from Steven's perspective, which I think was a big strength, because then you get that mystery towards it, and you get the reveal that he's the fake personality.
Yeah, because they introduce him like so strong, and he's chained to his bed. He's he thinks he sleepwalks and all that, but in reality, it's his alternate self. Because he wakes up and he's like, "Wait a minute, I didn't hurt these people." And you're like, "Okay, well then how? How are these people dead?" I really did enjoy the part where they were in the like Egyptian tomb area, and there was that like carcass sitting, and he's like, "Is that chunks of meat or bits of human flesh?" So Steven I think that was my favorite personality overall.
Yeah,
knowing that we got these 3 different personalities, I enjoyed knowing who is missing, because you had Steven and you had Mark, and Jake wasn't there until the last 2 minutes of the show. So for me, whenever he blacked out, I was guessing, was that Jake or was that Mark? Was that Jake or was that Mark? So I felt like, for me, having that little bit of background, it was more anticipatory. It gave me more to look forward to see who did the beating up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, Jake had been there all along. Jake was the one who beat up all those goons on the cupcake truck. And Jake was the one who asked that woman out to the steakhouse because Steven is socially awkward and Mark is married. And Steven's a vegetarian. He's kind of like all the better things of Mark. So, and Jake was the one who stabbed those guys on that rooftop. Like, Jake had been there all along.
Instead of Agatha all along, it was Jake all along.
It was Jake all along. No catchy theme song, though.
That's a shame.
Just to bullet in the brain.
Just a bullet in the brain. Oh.
Well, what did you guys think of the suit? Because I noticed that it does come up like a symbiote. It wraps around him, but in the comics, he has to dress himself. So what do you guys think of that?
I like it, and it kind of helps. The fact that the suit manifests itself out of nowhere helps the fact that there's two different personalities, and like you were saying, how it's easier to tell who's who, and the fact that the suit will switch on the fly like that means that the personalities can switch on the fly, and we can know who's in control.
Can we talk about Ethan Hawke's character?
Yeah.
How uncomfortable he was in both roles.
Yeah.
Like,
I was disappointed we didn't get to see him suit up.
Yeah.
I was like, the guy's just got a cane and he's walking around and he's going up against Moon Knight, and it doesn't look like, two equal people fighting off. It looks like some old man who just finished bingo and then Moon Knight fighting.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have liked
that helped the dichotomy of it all, because Arthur was the avatar before Mark, so he knows all of the strengths and weaknesses of Khonshu. So why I don't know this, but I'm figuring in his mind, why would he need to suit up if he's got this magical cane that can summon dead dogs and people take their souls out of it? I didn't really see him needing a suit. I feel like it would have just taken away from his creepiness, because he's one of those terrifying characters that are all the more terrifying because he doesn't hide who he is.
That's a good way to look at it, Ryan. I never thought of that. He was interesting. Ethan Hawke came on the show for just a season. It looks like it's going to be, and Oscar Isaac kind of ran into him in a coffee shop and pitched the whole show to him. So, how is this an accurate portrayal, or is this something entirely fresh from the comics?
I don't know too much about Arthur Harrow from the comics, but I do know that he wasn't controlled by Amu, and he wasn't an avatar of Khonshu, from what I understand. So it feels like they just took him from the comics, just the namesake, and then slapped it onto Ethan Hawke's character and made him that backstory. Again, I could be wrong. I haven't read that Fist of Vengeance or the Fist of Moon Knight. I haven't read that one, but it's only 6 issues long, just like this miniseries. So I was thinking it would be just adapting those comic books, but I'm very happy to see that it was a new storyline from what I could tell. And Layla doesn't, as far as I know, have any comic counterpart. I'm sure she does back in the day, but I don't think it was this fleshed out. And Mark Spector in the comics doesn't marry Layla. He marries Maureen or Maurice, and they have a kid together too. So it was also very interesting to see this as a fresh take on Moon Knight, and I appreciated it very much.
I really enjoyed the hospital parts. How he was, Ethan Hawke's character was like a doctor, and he was trying to convince like Mark that he's basically crazy, and how he meets up with Steven, and they're just two beings in that hospital setting. That part was interesting. And then the shaking coffin, that was cool, because I was like, is that Jake, like, in the coffin? And I also really enjoyed the character designs of the gods. I enjoyed Khonshu. I enjoyed, and I can't remember it, but the hippo god. Can't remember the name of that.
What?
Amaret. Yeah, I really enjoyed that, and I really liked the alligator god at the end. I don't know why Disney Plus is going towards alligator. Whatever, we had alligator Loki, now we have an alligator god. So, but I really did enjoy that design probably the most. Just the way like it moved. I don't know. Was it a she, he, it, they?
Yeah, they.
But,
yeah. I feel like the strongest strength of this show definitely was how it tied the multiple personalities back into Moon Knight's origin, and how Jake and how Mark had lost a brother, and he had to create a different personality to cope with that. So I'm wondering if Jake is an alternate personality of Mark, or if Jake is an alternate personality of Steven, and what happened where they had to create another personality.
Well, the interesting thing is, in the comics, Randall is very much alive, and he's the enemy of Moon Knight. He's called Shadow Knight. So that's very interesting that they quote unquote, killed off Randall early, and that's how his personalities manifested. But I think that Jake is, so to speak, the devil of Mark, and Steven is the angel of Mark, and Mark is the two of them being balanced. So I'm not sure what could have happened. But in the comics, Khonshu does contact Mark when he's a child, and there's some comics that are like, oh, hey, this is why Mark has DID, because Khonshu contacted him when he was a kid, and the kid didn't know what the hell else to do, so he just started making different personalities to try and hold on to his sanity while being touched by an Egyptian god. So that's one way to look at the DID manifestation, but I really liked what Disney did with it, where they had his mom basically being the reason why he's got so many personalities in his head.
You know, and that whole aspect of it, you can relate to it in some way. I mean, when we were kids, like, you know, you get in trouble or you're trying to shy away from a stressful, horrible situation, you try to think of something positive, or, you know, I think I had an imaginary friend when I was a kid. So it just manifests all that into what you can grow up to be. In this case, Mark, he never really let it go, and his personalities just took over. So
I was thinking when he went to his mom's funeral, I was thinking that would be Jake manifesting himself, but instead it was Steven. And that's how the show kicked off, was with Steven getting woken in the street.
Yeah.
Calling his mom.
Yeah, I really appreciate that whole aspect of just, you know, your mentality and mental health. I'm a huge advocate for that, so I always appreciate when something like that's in a show represented.
So my understanding is that Mark had created Steven during childhood, and after Mark had moved out of the house and got away from his mother, Steven had kind of been like repressed, and then when his mother passes away and he has to cope with all that trauma again, that's when the show kind of starts, and that's when Steven comes back out.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I really would have liked to have seen more of how Mark and Layla met and like got married and like that aspect of it, because she just kind of sprung on him that, you know, she was his wife, and Steven was like, what? But yeah, I wish we could have seen a little more of that, because like I said, that took me by surprise. It's like, oh, there's a wife involved now. Oh God.
I was wondering if they got married before or after his contact with Khonshu, because Bushman in the comics is the reason why Khonshu contacts Mark in in issue number 1. So I was really interested to see if he was married before or after that. I'm assuming it was after, but it's very interesting to me where in the timeline she falls within this whole grand scheme of things.
Mm-hmm.
I thought was refreshing from a narrative standpoint too, with a lot of Marvel movies and a lot of superhero genres, you get to see them meet the woman of their dreams and fall in love with them and then get married. And this show kind of skipped all of that and said, you know what, she's her own character. She's just not a love interest. They're already married. She's already his wife, and she's there, and she's a contributor.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Kind of like what they
Exactly.
did with the Spider-Man movies. No one wants to see another Spider-Man origin story in the first movie. So I like they did that. They're like, we don't need to know the origins of this. We'll just sprinkle in context clues throughout the show. I thought that was very good, and it doesn't talk down to the audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this was a show that really didn't give you too much. Like, you really had to think for yourself and follow things and think critically to follow the show. And I really appreciate that, because that really held my interest, and it seemed like the show delivered really on those emotional moments the best, because they were emotional revelations that we as the audience followed through with on either Mark or Steven. So I really like it.
This is why I consulted you after every episode. Because like I said, I was confused, but as you explained it to me, I understood it. And then I, drew my conclusion and was like, okay, yeah. I mean, I didn't hate it. It wasn't my favorite, but I enjoyed it. I thought it, especially the humorous parts. I thought Oscar Isaac was awesome, especially with like his British quips.
And
where he's like, everyone's talking about my English accent, but to me, it makes sense because he's fake British. He was manifested in childhood to be a fake personality.
Yeah.
So of course his British accent would be fake.
yeah, like, he was going on telling people, like, there's a reason why it's so bad. There's a reason why it's so bad. Just pay attention. And we had to trust Oscar Isaac. So, I mean, he did such a good job with
he was great.
all three roles. I mean, his Steven is so funny and
Innocent.
kind-hearted and innocent, and then his Mark is so, more typical Oscar Isaac, that, the badass with guns and the heavy hitter of the group. And then Jake is so interesting in that he's so violent and he's so detached. And Oscar Isaac just weaves through these three roles so well.
Yeah, shows his range.
I think it's the best acted debut for a Marvel character in a long time. Like, I haven't been so impressed with like a first go of a Marvel character. I can't think of the last time I was like, wow, this character's awesome. So.
I thought it was really weird when they first announced that the Disney Plus series, the first one that wasn't going to be an Avenger or a tie-in character from a movie, was going to be Moon Knight. When I heard that, I crapped my pants because I'm a fanboy for life for Moon Knight. But then I was sitting here going, why? Why Moon Knight? There's so many other characters that would fit in the MCU better than Moon Knight. But I'm glad that they did it, and I don't want to say surprised, but I'm waiting at the edge of my seat to see if Oscar Isaac comes back for more, or if they're just going to let this be a one-off series and then just let it lie.
I think it was a strength of the show to kind of detach itself and just do its own thing, because the Marvel Cinematic Universe right now, in my opinion, doesn't have like a clear direction. Like we don't have like an Avengers movie coming up. We don't have a movie like Civil War where we can just expect to see all these characters again. Like, we don't know the next time we're going to see Captain Hawkeye, or next time we're going to see Spider-Man, or the next time we're going to see Hulk. Like we don't know. So the fact that this show is just kind of going to do its own thing and kind of leverage the Marvel property that way, I appreciate. Would you have liked to see more crossovers, Amanda, or were you satisfied with this being what it was?
I'm satisfied, because here's the thing too: the end credit scene, I didn't see it as a cliffhanger. I thought it was extremely final. It's like, Mike, you were anticipating Jake coming up the whole time, so he finally did at the end. Shot Arthur, yeah, and then that was it, and that was the end of Arthur's story, obviously. And I feel like that was like, that's it, that's the end, like roll credits. So I agree with the show being like just a freestanding show. But it's great that Marvel's introducing these characters. Like, I've never heard of Moon Knight. I've heard of Captain America before, Thor, like all that, but I've never heard of Moon Knight. And it's like bringing these characters to life that, probably might be cast aside.
I'm surprised that they also did that with Echo and Hawkeye, because she's not necessarily a good character to bring to the forefront of a show. And in the comics, I don't think she's ever had a standalone comic. Like in the last 20 years since David Mack drew her and introduced her, I don't think she's had a standalone like Echo #1, Echo #2 title. So I think that was very interesting of them to bring it forward and put her in Hawkeye as the villain. I think that was really great on their part.
Yeah, I'm excited for Echo. Especially if there's Wilson Fisk potential. I love Wilson Fisk. I think he's great.
Amanda loves Wilson Fisk.
I love villains. What can I say?
Yes.
Anti-heroes.
The only thing that I really want to get off my chest is that I really think that Kevin Feige is going toward Dark Avengers or Midnight Suns in Phase 5 or 6, way down the road. And I think that Moon Knight might team up with Blade and Ghost Rider for that. I really want it to happen. I can see it happening along with like the X-Men reboot, but that's what I really hope he's going for with Moon Knight, because it's just weird to have a talent like Oscar Isaac nail it out of the park with this role and then just leave him. I mean, it's all in Oscar Isaac's shoes because he's got some critical reception. Everyone's freaking out about him. So it's really the ball's in his park. And he needs to just get the opportunity, or he'll just be like, yeah, I think we're good here.
Yeah, I agree. Now, does Moon Knight serve like any, and this might be a dumb question, but like, does he serve any one place, like Egypt, or can he go to New York?
He started in New York, and then when he joined the West Coast Avengers, he popped back over to LA. And then in the comic book line right now, he's in New York again.
Because you said he teamed up with like Punisher, right?
Yes, he's teamed up with Punisher and Spider-Man and Daredevil and Ghost Rider, you name it. He probably has shared a panel with him in the comics.
Because I know we really would like another Daredevil series. And I really personally love the Defenders. So I'm like, what if they added him into like the Defenders group somehow? Because, those shows, Jessica Jones, Daredevil, are, pretty adult. And, Moon Knight kind of touched on the whole dark aspect and all that. So I'm wondering, if they wanted to go that route, they'd kind of tie it in. I don't know. That's just me speculating and wishful thinking.
I think that's happening, especially because obviously it's confirmed that Charlie Cox is coming back from the Daredevil show. I heard rumors that Christian Ritter's coming back as well.
Oh,
but
yes.
No one said anything about Iron Fist or Luke Cage. So if they transplanted Moon Knight into the Defenders universe and replaced Iron Fist with Moon Knight, I wouldn't be too upset.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
I think there needs to be like a Shang-Chi Iron Fist team up where Shang-Chi just like roasts Iron Fist on like his culture appropriation like the entire time, and we can kind of humble the character and then go back into like the more Asian roots of it all, and then going forward we can kind of feel like Iron Fist has redeemed himself. So yeah, I mean a cool Defenders lineup would be Jessica Jones, Daredevil, Moon Knight,
Rosario Dawson's character treating their wounds.
Rosario Dawson coming back. And I guess we need kind of like a fourth character, maybe the Punisher again. I don't know. Yeah. That's what I would do.
I could see Punisher and Jake Lockley getting into fisticuffs.
Yeah, I mean, like, so does Jake Lockley have like a code? Does he have a code like the Punisher, or is he just violent against like everyone?
Well, like I said, this isn't a tried and true comic book adaptation of it, and I don't think Jake Lockley actually did fights. He wasn't the super serial killer of the three of them. He was just an information gatherer. So I don't think so in the comics, but in the show, obviously, he's the one that puts baddies down for good.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
And I think it'd be really funny for him, Jake Lockley, and Punisher to get into a fight, and then all of a sudden Stephen Grant comes up and he's like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, Stephen Grant's
hopefully sorry.
like, obsessive apologizing is just something I relate to on
Same.
a terrible level.
Oh, so true. Well, I think that's it for the Moon Knight discussion. Ryan, thank you again for coming on. This was fun. Yeah. So make sure next time is a show I've been waiting for. It's the Essex Serpent coming on to Apple Plus, and it stars my boy Tom Hiddleston. So I'm going to be reviewing the first couple episodes on that. So you don't want to miss that out. I hope you guys have a good week and talk to you next time.